Hello and welcome to Gone Phishing, a podcast from the North East Business Resilience Centre, aka the NEBRC, focusing on all things cyber related. Our aim is to help raise awareness and understanding among business audiences, supporting them to be better prepared and protected from the growing issue of cybercrime and fraud. I'm Rebecca Chapman, Director of the NEBRC and the Superintendent at South Yorkshire Police with nearly 30 years' experience across uniform and CID. Today, I am delighted to be speaking to Deputy Chief Constable Paul Anderson from Humberside Police, who is also my fellow director at the NEBRC and my police boss. So we have to be pleasant and polite today, don't we? So welcome. And would you mind introducing yourself and maybe saying a bit about what you do at Humberside Police?
Good morning, Becky. Yeah, be absolutely delighted. I think you've just done the introduction for me, so I don't need to say a lot. But I'm Paul Anderson. I'm the Deputy Chief Constable at Humberside Police. Look, I could explain all the various departments and corporate functions that are kind of set under me. I don't really think that's the reason we're here today. To put it in the most simple terms, as Deputy Chief Constable, in effect, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the force. So kind of the three stream heads, the three assistant chiefs report into me for crime, local policing and all the enabling kind of functions such as HR, business, etc. And it's my job just to oversee the day-to-day running of the force. But like most other chief officers, as well as a local arrangement and local responsibilities, we also have regional and national ones. I was the lucky winner of the NEBRC, but in particular, I'm the SRO for the North of England for cyber policing.
And by SRO, you mean Senior Responsible Officer for those non-policey people out there?
Sorry, I promised not to talk in acronyms. Never get that right, do I?
So just tell me what you think the centre means to policing, that portfolio at Humberside.
Yeah, I think it's a two-edged question. It's what the centre means for policing and then what the centre means for business. I'll tell you, I'll begin with saying what the centre means for me, because when we start using words cyber and then we're going into crypto, enabled, etc., we start to think really high tech. I like to think of things in the most simple way possible, and I like to think of things in terms of old-fashioned policing. I don't think you find a house now anywhere in the country that hasn't got some form of cyber function or cyber enabled function in there, be it phones, your Android phones, computers. There's computers in literally everything from our cars to our fridges. But kind of with any technology, people exploit that technology. And crime is committed via the internet and via the majority of cyber enabled kind of mechanisms. I like to think of the NEBRC as the footprint between business and policing, where we offer good old-fashioned crime prevention advice.
So what do you think policing teams are seeing in terms of cybercrime today, and how are they responding to it?
Well, policing teams policing. I mean, we've seen a steady rise of cyber-enabled crime over the past 1 to 2 decades. There's going to be no shock there. There's very few people that, I referred to phones earlier, but there's very few people that don't have a phone, an iPhone or another type of phone in their hands these days. In terms of cyber-enabled crime, we're not going to be looking too far into the future where we're going to see 80% plus of all crime having a footprint somewhere in the cyber world. So we're seeing an exponential rise. And what we need to do as a police service is not just police traditional crimes, as the public would know. It's not necessarily just being out there walking and talking in cars and responding, but we need to be able to, to be an effective police service, we need to be able to prevent crime. And this one in particular, because prevent is the absolute key. Because the thing about cyber is the people that the perpetrators of these crimes, you don't see them, and it can be really difficult to catch them. So to prevent it from happening in the first place going forward, that's got to be the absolute key.
Yeah, so we talk about, judicial outcomes, and obviously that's one of the ways that obviously traditional crime is measured. So are you saying that maybe in the future will be measured more on prevention rather than the cure afterwards?
I mean, we say measured into the future. Let's go really, really old-fashioned now, because I like doing this. But let's just look about what the police service does. Go all the way back to kind of the founding principles for Robert Peel. I mean, he's quoted, whether it's true or not, but one of his famous phrases is, the ultimate measure of effectiveness or efficiency of a police service is the absence of crime and disorder. So we've always been measured against our ability to prevent crime. On a day-to-day basis, my cops that are out there, my uniformed cops, in particular the neighbourhood policing teams, they're held to account for their communities for stopping it happening in the first place. So it's there. However, with the cyber world, it's really, really complicated. So, the NEBRC and that link into certainly small and medium-sized business is, if anything, it's the government's offer, it's policing's offer, but working with our business community for us to get out there, but offer a service to people where someone can hook into it, they can link into it, and there's services that are sitting there. They can be talked through, but really, even someone like me, because I didn't come from that generation, but working through the information that you supply with the NEBRC in a really easy and practical way, I can see how to target harden myself. In short, and putting it in English, making a computer harder to tap into, to make sure clandestine activity doesn't occur, and also for the businesses out there. And because the majority of businesses aren't these massive, great big, multi-billion-pound corporate entities, they're small businesses, which is normal people trying to earn a buck in the real world, and cybercrime may not have been there at the forefront of their mind when they set these businesses up. So us having a form of offer out there to say, look what we can offer in a really simple way. Look for the free practical advice you can get from us to prevent this crime happening, and to show how to target harden your business. Or if you want to go that one step further, here's some services that we can offer. I think it's brilliant.
And just moving on to those services, what do you think that means for the students that are involved in the services with the centre?
What does it mean for the students? What you're talking about there is what we have we call it our student services. I think that's the correct term. But we have students out there helping to deliver that. What it means specifically for them, that is real life work experience. And not only that, it's honing their skills for future full-time employment. So what it means for the student is, it means experience, it means engagement, and it means actually making a really practical difference. But likewise, I like to flip every question. What does it mean for the businesses? Well, the students, they've got young minds. That's their, future possible workforce coming through. But also from a really young and informed perspective, it helps them update their skills and target harden their business. And what I mean by target harden, passing some real practical advice, how to navigate and understand the intranet and the cyber world, just to keep yourself safe.
And do you think that there is a link to wide organised crime funding and maybe even the terrorism network in terms of cybercrime?
Cyber-enabled crime, it starts from, we could be talking some really, really simple crime. And then at the far end, yes, absolutely. Is there serious and organised crime groups out there using the net, using the web in order to facilitate organised crime to actually take millions and millions of pounds, potentially billions, from UK business and our population? Yes, there is. Now, what happens to that money? When you're dealing with serious and organised crime, some of it is very dark. Can it end up in streams such as counter-terrorism, funding activities such as that? Yes, it can.
So what do you think the future looks like in terms of cybercrime and fraud for the police, and how can the centre and its staff help?
What does the future look like? The future looks, for me, and this is a personal opinion, like more cyber-enabled crime. I see more happening in that cyberspace. Now, the centre and the NEBRC, for me, is just a wonderful organisation. So you've got yourself in there as an experienced police officer. You referred to me as your police boss. That made me laugh, but so you've got a direct link into the police world, and you have two experienced detectives working in with you. But what you've got is you've got an amazing mix of people in there. You've got the likes of kind of Lizzie and Chantel in there interacting kind of, in terms of the products with the business community. You've got your students. I'm thinking of one young man in particular that kind of scares me every time I meet him. Watch him fly around kind of keyboards on computers. So what you're doing is you're colliding the two worlds of policing and business. The main strength, I think, you bring as, call it a business because it's what you are as such. But the main strength is you're linked in with policing. There's funding that comes directly from the Home Office, but you're also linked in with business because we have our advisory board, as you're well aware, and that's not driven by policing, that's driven by the business side. So we have the connectivity into the City of London Police, the national leads for cybercrime, myself as the SRO, the experience in police world, and then on the other side from business. So already the conversation begins. I think the challenge for us is now how we really spark the interest for all those small and medium-sized businesses, because our centre, I honestly believe, is the best centre. It's certainly one of the most successful when you look at the uptake, but when you look at the size of the the business world, small and medium size enterprises, and those numbers that we've penetrated so far, we're only at the tip of the iceberg. So we've got a lot more to do. Sorry,
Yeah.
Becky, I've just given you some more work, haven't I?
No, we've set our aims high for the next few years to get just 2% of the 468,000 SMEs that are in the northeast of England. So one of the ways that we could do that, obviously, is branching into other areas other than cyber. And we've briefly done a foray into fraud, taking over the Northeast Fraud Forum. But do you think we could mirror Scotland's centre and perhaps become the business-facing element of policing in each region? Things like the nighttime economy or safer roads.
Yeah, opportunities are abound wherever you look. The centre is a business resilience centre. So the key word in that is business. The strength of it is the quality that you have sitting on the board advising us. And it's really important that we're business led. And when you throw those posh words away, what does it mean? It's the people that we want to protect telling us what they need, what confuses them, what worries them, and then we can we can present things to them. So if you're saying can we look? You look at Scotland, but can we look into other areas of business? Can we look into where it sits in terms of nighttime economy, illicit counterfeit goods, kind of safer roads, such like? There's always opportunities. I think our main game in town for the next year ahead is doing what we do best and continuing to grow. I think the rest comes as a consequence.
Okay, so basically, I think you and me both are on the same page here. We kind of see this as basic neighbourhood policing, crime prevention in a Robert Peel style fashion, but done very regionally and locally so that people understand it, both on cyber enabled, cyber dependent and fraud. Is there anything else that we think we ought to be concentrating on right now?
We've got other areas we can talk about. When you look at business, there's retail, there's tourism, which we've talked about, and all of those have cyber absolutely at the heart. The sky's going to be the absolute limit for the future because cyber goes everywhere. Areas for me to concentrate on are, it's getting those numbers, getting that engagement as absolutely sky high as we can. Your words there, and you say we're on the same page. We've got very much the same view, which is quite lucky, really, as we work together. But nobody else, none of the other cyber leads. Sometimes I have to say I find it a little perplexing. But I talk about Dixon of Dock Green, and I do it to be provocative, because do we have one in the metaverse? It was done. I'll have to go and have a look. But that's how we need to think, and to a greater or lesser degree, the cyber world has scared a lot of people off from looking at policing from that point of view. So I do think the public and the people, our customers, they've got to start thinking that way. Just like you'd pop a burglar alarm on your actual physical premises, you need to do something similar on your virtual premises. But likewise, what I would like to see is neighbourhood policing engaging more with the cyber world. So our cops, the majority, those hundreds, those thousands of good men and women out there, kind of on a daily basis fighting the fight, but when they're out there with their communities, because that's what we're talking about, they've got that information to act as a signpost. And that's probably our biggest opportunity, I think, Becky, going forward to the next year or so.
And do you think the sort of youth police force of today is kind of up to the job? Do they have the tools and the education in which to deliver that training to members of the public?
I do. I know there's much debate over this, and I am an eternal optimist, as you'll always point out to me. But it was, I honestly believe that. I just think, you've got nearly 30 years. I've got 32 years in, so I'm one of the very few people in policing that trumps you, Becky. And I just remember 32 years ago going out with my big pointy hat, my tunic and my 5 shiny buttons and my wooden truncheon that wasn't even good to open a car window because it would break. But I can remember back then about, as a young Bobby, as a young cop, what I needed to know. You went out, and you'll remember, with your pocket notebook. I'm not old enough to have a whistle, so don't even go there. But I know what I needed to do, and then a really simple crime report. Look at what the new Bobbies coming through the system. Look at kind of what they understand in terms of partnership, the world around them. It's 5-10 times they're 5-10 times better prepared than I ever was. And whether you do or you don't agree with it, policing's gone very much down a degree entry route. Now, what that has presented, that there's plus and there's downsides to everything, but the plus side for us in cyber, it enables us to link in with the universities more, and it puts more quality learning time for the student officers coming through to understand these more kind of complex areas. And to be frank, they simply didn't exist when I was a young cop, Becky. I doubt they did. I doubt you were thinking about it much as well when you were a young cop in Sheffield. It was, but now it buzzes your head a bit.
Yeah, the sheer complexity, when I sort of went out first on the beat, the most I ever had was a pager. And I think that was 2 or 3 years into the job. And then mobile phones kind of came afterwards. And now the sheer complexity of just going to a crime and having to think about all the cyber ramifications of investigation or possibilities that are in a scene, other than just fingerprints and footprints, is quite incredible, really. So it's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what the cop needs to know. So just like if we went to a burglary and we went to an old-fashioned house break-in, the cop would secure the scene. So what my police officers and police staff need to know these days, if they get a report of a cybercrime, could be a fraud, could be a hacking, what can they do in exactly the same way to secure that evidence? And that's the basic information they need to know. The challenge for you and I is then kind of getting out there so the public and kind of the larger, the public at large and the business community know what they can do to prevent crime like that as well. And then on the other side of it, and we haven't concentrated on it on this podcast, and it's right not to, because I think it's a whole different podcast. But with the with the regional crime units, and then what sits at the centre, the UK has got a really good cyber network tackling serious and organised crime and tackling the terrorist elements we talked about kind of earlier, but kind of at that regional and that national level. So the capabilities out there. So it's horses for courses. So you are absolutely dead right. For us, it's about crime prevention and working in partnership, just working side by side with our neighbourhood policing colleagues.
Yeah, and just keeping it local so that, people see a local face to the police and a local face to business and the partnerships that we have.
Yeah, everyone wants to see a local Bobby. It was, there's no doubt about that. Now, what's quite obvious is everyone wants to see someone local, but the other thing they want to see, and here's the dichotomy, they want to see the person, whoever that may be, with the right skill set and able to help them. So when that Bobby attends a scene and there's been a report of a cyber crime and they go to take it, they can take those initial steps to secure and preserve any evidence. However, it may be right in certain circumstances, then after, in terms of the referrals, we get them the right help. And that could be people sitting a long way away possibly. But if that means they've got the best skills, the best equipment and the best tools to actually follow that cyber evidence trail, identify who that person is and stop them from the future, or kind of ultimately bring them to justice, that's also a good thing. So I'll take a bit of both on that one.
And just kind of finally wrapping up, what would you say to businesses who are or have been reluctant to report cybercrime to the police before?
I would leave, if I'm going to end, there would be two notes I've got for businesses. It was to answer your question directly. If you don't report crime, we don't know it's happening, so we can't do something about it. It's that simple. Now, there's lots of mechanisms in business, take banking, for instance, where, they're helping us in terms of collating all of that information. But we need to know the scale of the problem. And the reason we need to know that, we may not solve every crime because some of these are incredibly difficult to solve. But if you know the totality of the problem, that helps us with central government negotiate kind of the money and the funding in order to put the prevention and then the proactive elements about chasing those responsible, kind of, chasing them down. So you need to report it. So please do. Secondly, I've got another kind of message for the business. Let's go back to the NEBRC. If you remember when we started working a couple of years ago and I was trying to get my head around it, I said to you, there is just simply nothing bad about the NEBRC. It was that there is no element of it that kind of I find difficult or kind of anything other than a pleasure. Business need to understand what it is, go and look on the website, go and have a look at kind of the services on offer and engage with it, because it's a tool that's there for you. It's free. And if you wish to buy in kind of different elements of services, if you want to kind of move to silver and gold standard, those options are there. But it's another way in a modern world to make yourself safe. And the only thing I've got to say to that is, why wouldn't you?
Indeed, why wouldn't you? Well, that's been fantastic. Thanks ever so much for sparing the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Becky.